Welcome to the Advanced Selling Podcast, the longest running sales training podcast in the history of podcasts. Can I get some applause, everybody in the room? We are live. I'll do my fake applause. Oh, no. Wrong button. Just kidding. No. We are live in Kansas City. We are at, what a great little jazz club here. We're at Lonnie's Reno Club in a beautiful hotel, in the Ambassador Hotel, doing the Blind Zebra Summer Tour. It's just been awesome. We have a live audience here, and we have a special guest listener. I'll introduce him in a second. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. This is the solo episode. This is B. Neal's solo episode. So go check out blind-zebra.com and look at what we're doing around the Blind Zebra sales operating system. We've been rolling that out. We're certifying people in our operating system, and we'd love to chat with you. Now, the one thing to know, the certification is a more geared around leadership and sales enablement. So we don't do it for individual salespeople, but we'd love to talk to you because there's a chance that you could be on the team too. Doing that, we're on the road, Kansas City. It's great coming from Indianapolis and being in Kansas City, and also from my NFL ref job. I have been in a lot of situations in Kansas City, some good, some bad. So it's been kind of a fun thing to do. Now, here's the good news. We have live audience, which is fun. We also have one of the greatest things about doing podcasts, as you know, is you have listeners around the world, really. They get to know you through the voice, and then they meet you, and they're sadly disappointed. You're not supposed to meet your heroes. Not that we're heroes to anybody, but that's a thing. But we're doing this live. We said, hey, let's have a group. So we've got an audience. It's awesome. And we also asked, do any of the audience members want to be on the podcast? And someone said yes. So I'm super pumped to have with me on the podcast, longtime listener, Chad Waldo. Welcome to the Advanced Selling Podcast, my man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And you're right. You're much smaller in person than I thought you'd be.
Thank you.
I mean, that's dreams dashed. But no, it's great. It's wonderful being here. I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on.
It's fantastic. And you've been listening for how long, Chad?
2015. 2015. When I first got into actual sales. I've been in sales kind of all my life, really. When you own your own business or you're in a family business of some kind, you wind up being in sales. But 2015 is when I really started doing what I would call true sales, and have been doing that ever since, and started listening to the podcast that year.
I love that. And I asked Chad beforehand, I said, hey, we talked about how you got here and all that stuff, and you owned your own shop before that, right? Now, when you owned your own business, did you feel like you were in sales, or do you feel like you owned a business?
I felt like the business ran me.
That's a good answer.
But yeah, no, I was in sales. I mean, I definitely in sales, whether it was selling the company or selling the product at any given time, or even just trying to sell the quality government guy that would come around every Thursday to be able to certify the shipments to go out. I'd have to sell that to him.
Yes.
So yeah, definitely one way, shape, or the other in sales that whole time.
That's a good thing to do. So we want to talk about this because we've got kind of a mixed crowd, a mixed audience here. We have someone who has been in sales since April in the audience. Is that right? Since April, and this is June. That's May, so it's 2 months. We have someone that's been in sales for about a year. Right. And that's Olivia. She happens to have the last name of Waldo. So Chad brought his daughter. Cheers.
I did.
Good job. I love that. And then we have some 10-year to 14-year salespeople in the room. And then, of course, Grandpa over here has been in sales since 1992. Go figure.
Wow.
And I guessed exactly what year your daughter was born, because my daughter was born the same year. I said, you're born in 2002, weren't you? So we want to talk on today's episode about what advice, or what's been the path. What would we tell people who are new in sales? There's another interesting little element to this too, that some of these people don't think they're in sales, which I thought was kind of an interesting little thing. So take us back, Chad, 2015, you sell your business. Now you're out doing a sales thing. When you're thinking about that, what were some things that you wish you would have known or learned or figured out sooner?
I had a very skewed perspective on what sales was going into my first real sales job in 2015. I had a buddy of mine who I'd known for a long time, bought some machines from him, and he wanted me to come work for him and sell machine tools. And my first thought was, I cannot be a used car salesman. That's not me. I don't want to do that. I don't want to shill stuff. If I'm going to sell anything, it has to be something I believe in. I've always been, in the past, when I'd done stuff with my company and my businesses, it was much easier to sell that because I believed in it. It was my thing. I owned it, right? And much easier to sell something when it's your own baby. And so getting into it, I had this very skewed, though, perspective on people who were in sales of product like that, whether it's machine tools or rentals or whatever it may be. If you don't own it and it's not yours, how does that? So that perspective and that perception shifted really quick. I thought of the machine tool business side of things with sales guys as more of just a whole bunch of guys that just, strolled into the office at 9 a.m., made a couple of phone calls, had lunch with people for 2 hours in the middle of the day, maybe did a round of golf and then went home on a martini, right? Like super easy, not hard to do, and made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that is not the case at all.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Sounds way more fun than what we're doing.
It does. But no. And so it took me a little while to kind of understand just how difficult a sales job really is. It really is difficult. There's no easy way to slice it, especially when you're looking at it from perspective of you've got a salary and that doesn't cover anything. And really it's your commission that covers everything.
Yes.
And so it's hard work. It really is hard work. And you have to be very, very self-motivated to do it.
I'm very glad to hear you say that, because I think a lot of that, the perception is so interesting, isn't it? That you've got and we've got some people from marketing and operations, and there's a little bit of a rub. The marketing operations people, like all the sales people do is exactly what Chad just said. This is exactly what you said. Go out and play golf,
banker's hours,
get drunk at night, which is true. Sometimes they do that.
Oh,
and
man.
It's really hard. I think people don't also understand how to process the pressure you feel sometimes.
Yeah.
Because once you're out, and you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You're in training and and then Sarah's going to be, cut out on your own. That's our person who's been in sales since April in the audience, then she's like, oh my gosh, now I'm on my own. Like, and all of a sudden this pressure comes to you. And I think that's one thing that I think back that I wish I would have had a better way to handle is the perceived pressure in my own mind on myself. I don't tell this story often because it's personal, but it's also kind of funny. I can laugh at it now. I was having panic attacks my first job. I worked for Procter & Gamble. I was having dreams in the middle of the night that people were forcing me to drink Downy fabric softener, and I couldn't breathe. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I couldn't breathe. And I'm
oddly specific.
It was
fabric softener.
No, believe me. I mean, can you tell I'm traumatized?
This is Tide Pods.
It totally is. So I this isn't just silly, but I'm kind of a hypochondriac. There were no cell phones back there. So I called a cardiologist. I called the cardiologist from a payphone in a Kroger. And I'm like, hey, I think I've been having like a heart attack or something. And they're like, how old are you? I'm like 22. They're like, and she asked me, she's like, you're probably not having a heart attack, dude. You need to go see a doctor. So I go to this regular doctor and he starts asking me, he's like, he's listening to my heart. He's like, you having girl problems? I'm like, no, dude, I'm having a freaking heart attack, dude. He's like, you know who Earl Campbell is? I'm like, he's a running back. I'm like, yeah. He goes, he has this problem. You're having panic attacks. And I'm like, huh? He's like, yeah, you're having panic attacks. And here it's a psychological like anxiety. I'm like, and I've always thought I could handle my stuff. And so he put me on Xanax when I was 22.
Wow.
And I was taking one a day. So I'm out in my sales territory. So I take a Xanax before lunch and then I eat lunch. I'm doing some stuff and I'm leaving to go to the next sales call. And I forgot that I took my Xanax. I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot to take my Xanax. So I took a second one 45 minutes later. Then I'm driving home and I'm like, something's not right.
Yeah.
I pull over, I go to sleep for like 2 hours and I threw the Xanax away that night. I'm like, I'm going to deal with this with meditation and breathing. And so I've been doing that ever since. Point to the story is, I wonder how many people feel that pressure and have no way to, process it. Yeah, raise your hand. Yeah, people like yes. Yeah. And meditation, breathing, I think is a little better than Xanax. But if Xanax works for you, that's good, right? These days, like who cares, right? But that's a really good topic.
Yeah, I think on my end, trying to figure that stuff out. When you own your own business, you put enough pressure on yourself doing that. And so when it came into sales, it was a different kind of pressure. It was more of a time pressure than it was anything else. If you didn't get something done, by the end of the quarter or by the end of the week, and then the next week would look like something else, or the next quarter would look like something else. And I listened to a lot of different stuff. I listened to obviously this podcast. I listened to several other podcasts, read a whole bunch of books, Jeb Blunt, people like that, Prospecting 101, that kind of thing. And I really kind of came down to the decision early on that there wasn't really any like one thing that was going to work. It was going to be a mix of everything, and that it wasn't good enough to just read one book and do some of it or all of it. You had to read a book and then read another book and then read another book and figure out all the little pieces of all of that work for you. Because every person's different. Everybody handles things differently. For you, you had panic attacks. For me, it was oh my God, what's the end of the quarter going to look like numbers wise? Like day one of like January 1, I'd already be thinking about the end of March. Like what's that number going to be? And start to back figure from that. And that's what I still do now is I always look at everything from 12 weeks at a time. not one whole year.
Yes.
It's always 12 weeks. I'd always think of how many phone calls do I have to make to get how many meetings, how many of those meetings turn into deals or opportunities at least, and then how many of those opportunities are going to close. And I just work the percentages. And then I know how many phone calls do I need to make every single day? Is it 50? Is it 100? And I don't care how many of them tell me no, because I hope they all do, because eventually one of them will say yes. The more no's I get, the faster I get to a yes.
That's awesome.
And so that's kind of what I started doing even in 2015, 2016. It took me a while. It took me 8 months to sell my first machine.
Dang.
Just about lost my keister.
Thanks for keeping it clean. We're still G-rated at the end.
Yeah, I'm trying.
We still don't have the explicit rating, which we try to keep.
I do not have a
even
clean
though
mouth, so I'm
Bill
trying.
and I cuss like sailors off the air. But
off the air, yeah.
Thank you.
So, but no, it took 8 months to get that first order. And then after that, it started to go. And so patience is a big thing you have to have in sales. You have to have patience with it.
There's a lot right in there. I'm going to highlight some listening. I'm like, man, this is really gold. Great gold. So the first is there's not a one size fits all.
No.
Everyone, like to think, well, Sandler's the way, or Spin's the thing, or Challenger's the thing, or Advanced Selling Podcast, or Blind Zebra Sales Operating System. It's not. There is one of my friends in my business. His name's Tom Searcy. He gave this quote. He attributes to his dad. He said, sales is 90% process and 10% magic. So it's the magic part that's the personality, but the process, and then you went into your process, which is you know exactly the math behind it. That's like people say, well, sales is a numbers game. Like it's a kind of a broad thing. There's a numeric element to it though, for sure, where there's a certain level of activity that breeds a certain level of opportunity that breeds a certain level of closing. People like to mechanize that. So there's a book called Predictable Revenue. It's really buzzy and popular. It's gotten a little less popular, I think, because it doesn't work like machines like we want it to, because we're humans.
Right.
But there's still an element of that. So we have to recognize that in some way, shape, or form, that's happening for sure. I think that was really cool that you said that. I
think it's a good way to take the pressure off. When you have your own metrics, when you have your own thing to kind of watch.
Yes.
Then there's the less of a guessing game.
Yes. You want to, you can. So we call this controllable behavior.
Yeah.
You're only working on the side of the fence that you can control. You can't control what people say yes or no to. Can't control if they can afford it. You can't control if their business is healthy. You can only control your side of it. So we have a business planning template we use in our operating system that has a whole section called controllable behaviors. And once a month, our clients that run in the system meet in triads in groups of 3, and they read their controllable behaviors. And they say one of 6 things. They either say hit or miss, done or not done, or on track or off track. And it's that simple. Yeah. What salespeople like to do is they go, well, like, how's you were supposed to make 50 calls a day. And you're like, well, and let's say you averaged 30. Like, well, I did pretty good. I mean, I had vacation in there, and they start to justify and flavor it up. And like, well, it's kind of, we went to 2 sales. I went to the podcast thing. So yeah, but 30, I did 30. It's pretty good. Like, no, you missed. The goal was 50. You did 30, miss. Yep. And you're not trouble. You're not like a bad human being, but we have to learn to own this stuff. Right. That's what I love about the NFL, because the NFL is just, there's one winner at the end, period. There's no opinion. There's no voting.
No ties.
Nothing. No ties.
Not like
there are ties.
European football.
We have ties in the regular season. I only say this begrudgingly because I've been in a couple of them.
Yeah, they're
such a pain.
They're bad.
They should go away.
Yep.
100%. I love that. So I love, this is really, really good for the newer people. What about hit the thing that, because we had a couple of people in the room that said, I'm not sure I'm really in sales. And you ran a business. So come looping back to the original question. We're like, are you really in sales? What's your take on that? If people think, I do this thing, like your daughter, Olivia, she's a photographer.
Yeah. I mean,
like, I'm not really in sales. I'm a photographer, but I'm guessing at some point there's an exchange there where you take pictures and people pay you money. And you have to get them to pay you money some way. So that's kind of a sales thing. So
I think the old adage, I don't know where it came from, or if it came from a movie like Kramer or whatever, but everybody's in sales.
Yeah.
Everybody's in sales. Either you're selling a product or you're selling yourself.
Yeah.
When you go to get a job and you're in an interview, you're selling yourself.
Yep.
When you're just interacting with other people in your office and you're trying to get them to understand what you want or what you think needs to be done, you're selling an idea.
Yep.
So it doesn't really matter what job you're in or what walk of life you're in or what version of your life you're in at that time. Throughout your entire life, you're in sales every day, because sales is a negotiation.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I mean, definitely, Olivia, you're in sales.
Sorry.
So,
Glad you're here now.
yeah.
I can't see this on the podcast, but she just gave the dad the kid wave off. She just sort of said, whatever, dude. I've always heard this, and I know it's to be true. At some point, everyone says your kids in their late 20s come around. They go, you know what, Dad? You're right about almost everything. Like, we know.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I mean, that's a normal
Not all of
cycle,
it.
right?
It
You
totally,
get
it's part of the
when the
deal.
kids are young,
Yeah.
the dad is just the be all end all, the big hero,
Yeah,
knows
right.
everything.
Yep.
Once they get closer to the teenage years, you get dumber every day. And as soon as they get into college in the 20s, they start to pay for everything themselves and they see how much taxes are coming out of their paycheck. Then the dad starts to get a little bit smarter.
Yeah.
By the time you're in their 20s and they're on their own, dad's the hero and smart again.
I love the first paycheck with taxes, because then the kids call you like they go,
what is this?
They go, is this right? Is this right? I'm like, yeah, it's really right.
How the hell do I make money?
Totally, it's a thing. Isn't it? That's fantastic. My take on the is everyone in sales sort of thing. One of the things I always like to temper this. This is one of our guiding principles and operating system too. Is you've got to always check your intention. Now, those of you who listen to the podcast for a long time, you've heard Bill and I talk about abundance and attachment and intention. Because just because you're in sales doesn't mean you're trying to persuade everybody to do your thing. It's just a matter to know that every time you're interacting in a new business transaction, you're in a process, conducting a process to get to an end outcome. Sometimes that outcome is favorable to you, so you do a sale. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it shouldn't be. We think about that too. So even sometimes, like if you're selling an idea, or we got people in the room who are in the development world that raise money. Sometimes a no thanks is actually the right answer. It's just not a good thing for the group to invest in the group that I'm representing. And I just move on to the next one. Like you said, they say no, and I like to think, I always coach clients too. And I love Olivia, your daughter's very wise beyond her years with this. She's in a photography business, and my wife, Stephanie, who's sitting here, said, what kind of photography do you do? Yeah. And her answer was, I don't do weddings. She didn't say what she did do. She said what she didn't do, which I love the boundary, because then it just makes it clearer. So people in sales like to hear yes a lot. I try to get very comfortable saying, here's what I do. Like in our world, like one of our no's, we don't do life wraps. So we will not come into a company whose sales are failing. We work with people who are already doing really well and want to edge it up a bit. Yeah. And so it makes it easy that way, That's a good thing. You should be proud of your daughter. That's all. I know you are, but
I am very much so. Very much so. She's amazing.
Especially to tag along with you. Now, the only reason she's here is because your air conditioner went out. And it's hot
probably
at home. So
probably, yeah.
It's nice and cool in here. We get that. No, that's good. That's not a bad thing. Well, hey man, thanks a bunch for hanging. It's great. Awesome, right?
Yeah,
long-term listener. So give it up for Chad.
Thank you,
Chad. Give it up for you guys. If you haven't checked out the Insider program, go do that. It's advancedlingpodcast.com. It's live training with Bill once a week. And by all means, go to blind-zebra.com and check out the Blind Zebra Sales Operating System. We'd love to chat with you and or your sales leadership about what that looks like to become certified. That's it. We'll see you next time in the Advanced Selling Podcast. Cheers. I love that.